You are not the only woman in the world with a daddy-sized hole in your heart. And you're not the only one who turned that pain onto a man who loved you. But this isn't about how other women handle their daddy issues. I've had some of my own. I still do. This is about your refusal to face them. So let's get it out of the way. I'm going to give you what you need tonight. But when this little women's retreat is over, I'm going to need you to get some help. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition. Short Stories, Synchronicity, Part 3. When we left off, it was the wee hours of the morning. LJ had seen Lyric safely into the chauffeured vehicle and returned to the Lopez estate in Puerto Rico. When he finally arrived, Javier was waiting for him outside of his designated villa in basketball shorts and a tank. Javier said, "Thank you for looking out for Lyric. She's a little stubborn and guarded, and if you weren't there, she would have slept in her car until morning." LJ said, "I got that impression. She was about to pull out on me." "What's too shoddy?" Javier said, "She's been through a lot. Singing at Bellamy's is a second chance for her. She's a sweet girl, but she's had some bad taste in men." LJ said, "Figures. Well, I told her that I would take care of it, so if you can get somebody over to the club to get a car and get that looked at, I'll cover the expense." Javier said, "Be careful. Don't get too close to the flame." Meanwhile, in Dallas, the Queen Mother had dropped a bomb on Angela. She told her that she knew exactly where Michael was and how he'd gotten there, but she couldn't tell her everything. When Angela asked why Michael and Tamara didn't just come back to Texas and they'd figure out a way to keep Tamara safe and let the two stay together, the Queen Mother had told her that it was bigger than the budding romance. While Michael wasn't an adult, he'd made a decision about the rest of his life, and all 5 of the notorious 5 families were going to support him in that decision. The Queen Mother said, "You were right when you said that the round table is always full of surprises and we always have some tricks up our sleeves. But you've got to know by now that our focus is always on the greater good. What's best for all, not one. I can understand why you don't want your children involved in this business. You got involved so that you could help clean things up and create an avenue of legitimacy for the next generation. That's admirable. I respect it. I appreciate it. All of the heads appreciate it. We pride ourselves on letting people choose for themselves. Our preference is not to back anybody in a corner, to force their hand, or to put them in positions that they can't get out of without doing our bidding. But some things are inevitable, Angela. Look at where you and Q are. Neither of you wanted to be involved in this game. But for the greater good, you put your preferences aside. You've chosen to hold on to your morals and values while also fighting for the tenets of the notorious 5 families. It's a thin line that requires a delicate balance. But when it's all said and done, what's best for this family, for your family, is what's best for all of the families." Angela said, "But not knowing where my son is," as the Queen Mother said, "Let me work, Angela. I know what it's like to be responsible for cultivating the mind of a brilliant boy, to watch him grow up and see him make choices and decisions that aren't necessarily in line with what you'd prefer. I also know what it's like to have others choose for you, to live with regret, playing the hand that somebody else dealt, only to run out of cards and end up right where you started. Look at me, Angela. I am entirely too old to be the queen pin, but I'm here because I'm making way for the next generation, and my only way out is ensuring their way in." When Angela asked the Queen Mother if she was the one who'd orchestrated Michael's running away, Queen Mother said, "Nope. I had nothing to do with it. For once, I wasn't the puppeteer. But please believe me when I tell you, no one planted the seed. It was all Michael's idea. And the person who helped him make it possible was following Michael's blueprint. And that person loves him, loves you, loves this family just as much as I do. Your son is safe. He could not be in better hands. And I know it's hard to believe, but these families are better with him precisely where he is, doing precisely what he's doing. And that'll be a whole lot clearer after the round table." When the Queen Mother finally arrived at the suite of rooms she was sharing with the grandmother crew and Catherine, the tension in the air was hella thick. The Queen Mother did not know what she'd missed, but she was sure that whatever it was heavy. Both Catherine and Mom Joyce looked like they'd been in a heavyweight title fight, and she wasn't sure if one of them won or if they both lost. Nobody had any injuries, but their hair was tossed hither and fro Their eyes were swollen. Their makeup was streaked all over their faces. And she couldn't rule out the possibility that the two old women had thrown hands. She was pleased to discover that nobody was worse for the wear. Apparently, they both shared some of their testimony. And Mom Brenda had turned it into a late night worship session. The Queen Mother said, "Brenda girl, you will have church anywhere." Mom Brenda said, "Now Bella girl, you know it's our reasonable service unto the Lord." The Queen Mother looked at Mrs. Ali, who was Muslim, and asked, "You good?" And Mom Brenda said, "Girl, she fine. I seen her over there waving her hands. Now, you right on time. What's been going on with you?" The Queen Mother said, "Oh, nothing. Idra been shucking, and I've been jiving. And I guess we both had enough of it. Because after this round table, he's going to pop the question." And all of the women cheered. Mom Brenda said, "Well, it's about damn time. Because you done dragged your little flat feet long enough. Don't you think?" The Queen Mother said, "I've been working. And so has he. Apparently, he's been working a little harder than I have. Because he been all up and through my kids' business. Right up under my damn nose. Every situation I done tried to help my babies through, he's crept up behind me with that baritone voice talking about, 'I've already handled it.'" And the older women all fell out laughing. Mom Joy said, "Sounds like you finally met your match." Mom Brenda said, "Uh-oh." The Queen Mother asked, "And what exactly is that supposed to mean?" "Anders was my match. If he hadn't gone on to glory, we'd still be together." Mom Joy said, "And if God didn't know best, you'd still be lost, pretending like your life turned out how you wanted it to." Mom Brenda said, "Yeah, I'm tired. I think I'll go to bed now." Queen Mother said, "Heifer, I beg your finest pardon. Since when you been the expert on my life?" Mom Joy said, "That's what you gonna do?" Queen Mother said, "I don't know what you mean. What I do know is you minding my business. Don't do that." Mom Joy said, "So your choice, your decision is to feign offense. You waiting for me to apologize? You the same woman who cussed me up one side and down the other immediately after my daughter and I were rescued from a harrowing experience. You had no problem telling me all about how it was all my fault that all of our babies barely escaped that situation with their lives. But you're gonna let your crown get a little crooked because I said you met your match. Girl, bye." Catherine said, all right. "Joyce, if you know anything about Bella, then you know cussing people out is her love language. And Bella, if you know anything about Joyce, you know she don't open her mouth unless she know what she's talking about. For the first time in a long time, I've had an opportunity to sit down with ladies who haven't spent their entire lives fighting colossal battles, waging war, and fighting with niggas. I let my underbelly show in here tonight. Brenda prayed the walls down, and I feel closer to God than I have in a very, very long time. I'm not going to let your ego ruin this night for me." And then Catherine dissolved into tears. The Queen Mother was shocked into silence for the first time in her life. She looked at Mom Brenda wide-eyed, and Mom Brenda said, "She told us about Suki Tanaka." At that same time, Angela and Regina were having a rather difficult conversation. When Angela returned to the room, Regina was in tears. Angela said, "Gigi, what's up?" Regina said, "I was a horrible wife. I'm a horrible mother, and I'm an even worse friend to you." Angela said, "Girl, it's too early in the morning for this. You weren't a horrible wife. You made mistakes. Now it's time for you to figure out what life looks like as a divorced woman. I don't know anything about being divorced, but I know what it's like to grieve a marriage. I know that it means grieving all the dreams that you had for your future." Regina said, "That's just it. I didn't have any dreams for my future." Angela said, "What?" Regina said, "I was perfectly comfortable doing what I was already doing things the way I always did them. I was comfortable in the routine. I wanted everybody to be safe, but I was comfortable with your family drama, spicing things up and shaking things up a little every now and again. All I really wanted was for my husband to choose me." Angela said, "He did. Over and over again." Regina said, "Right, but when you came to this estate, the day that I found out that Noah Kirk was the head honcho, and I told you that LJ had confessed what happened with y'all all those years ago, I was so wrecked that I couldn't even ask you what I wanted to ask." Angela said, "Here we go." Gina said, "No, don't do that, best friend. I'm serious. LJ told me his version of events, and this isn't about me not believing him. I just need closure. I need help figuring out if what he said to me is true." Angela said, "Well, which one is it? Either you believe him or you don't. Regina said, I'm not talking about the day that our divorce was final. I'm talking about the day that everybody came to me and my mother's rescue. LJ and I flew back alone. Angela said, yeah, I remember. Regina said, and he told me that the real problem in our marriage was that I was always insecure about his friendship with you, that I was always comparing myself to you, that I had turned our friendship into a sociological experiment. I'd watched you handle every pain, every loss, every adversity with a level of grace that I just didn't have. I got defensive. I went off. And by the time the flight landed, I felt like I'd put the final nail in the damn coffin. I told him that I needed closure in order to move on. And he told me that I wouldn't find it with him. Angela said, okay, LJ. Regina said, whose side are you on? Angela said, LJ's. The fact that you want me to add to the story he already told you is proof that he did the right thing. You need help, Regina. You have holes in your heart that only God and you can fill. You tried to fill them with LJ. It worked for a time, but it didn't take much for it to not work because you refused to do the work. You had no problem talking to a therapist about what happened when you were kidnapped, but that was only because you wanted to get back to your normal sex life. But now that you know who your father is for real, that your mother had been in the hands of a predator who had years of experience tricking young girls and getting them in his bed, and she made the right decision when she found out that she was pregnant with you and he wasn't who she thought he was. She had very little information and she still chose you, but that's never been enough for you. Regina said, but Angela said, I'm not judging you. You are not the only woman in the world with a daddy-sized hole in your heart. And you're not the only one who turned that pain onto a man who loved you. But this isn't about how other women handle their daddy issues. I've had some of my own. I still do. This is about your refusal to face them. So let's get it out of the way. I'm going to give you what you need tonight. But when this little women's retreat is over, I'm going to need you to get some help. But you're going to have to be able to take whatever I give you. Regina said, okay, I got my big girl panties on. Let's go. Angela said, I never felt closer to LJ than I felt when he was recovering from being shot. I thought my best friend was going to die. And yes, you and I are best friends, but he was my first best friend. LJ and I have probably had 2-3 arguments tops in 40 years. He knows what I'm thinking before I know what I'm thinking. The truth is the only connection I've ever had with a man that's deeper than the one that I have with LJ is the one I have with you. I married Marcus because he checked all the boxes, because I believed I could be happy, safe, and at peace with him. I actually thought that marriage would be drama-free. He was a square, I was a square, you know the rest. At the time when LJ was shot, I'd gone through my 3rd or 4th miscarriage. Marcus and I were barely speaking. Clearly, he was already involved with Jessica. And I was under the impression that the distance between us was because of all of our losses. So when I jumped in with both feet to help take care of LJ, I was doing it for him and for you. But it was extremely fulfilling for me. I'm a nurturer. I take care of people. I always have. Regina said, you are one of the most loving people I've ever met in my life. You'd have to be in order to be my friend. Angela said, and I'm with you when you're right. Both women chuckled. And Angela said, by the time LJ made his move, if you will, my emotions were all over the place. He grabbed me, he kissed me, completely catching me unaware. And within seconds of our lips touching, I felt gross out. I felt like I was kissing my brother. I pulled away. I asked him what the hell he was doing. He asked if I felt anything. I told him I felt disgust. He said he didn't believe me. Then he professed his undying love for me. As I listened, I quickly processed the kiss. And I realized that I did feel something else. Fear. LJ's fear. First, I thought that he was afraid that I would reject him, just like I did. And then I realized he was afraid of something else. And I told him exactly what he told you I told him. I stormed out of there, got in my car, drove to the parking lot of Vibrantly You and cried like a baby. Regina asked, why? Because you felt bad for him? For me? Angela said, no, for once it wasn't about anybody else. It was just about me. I had to be honest with myself too. If LJ wouldn't have kissed me, I wouldn't have realized that the fantasies that had been playing over and over again in my mind were just that, fantasies. And they would never ever come true. And I didn't want them to. Regina said, what kind of fantasies? Angela said, girl, don't start. I told you, you need to be able to handle whatever I tell you. We're going to put it all on the table or we're going to continue pretending like everything is fine. Regina said, I thought everything was fine. You said you forgave me. Angela said, forgave you, yes. Forgotten, hell no. Regina said, uh-oh, this about to get bad, ain't it? Angela said, for you, yes. I sat in my car and cried because for the previous few months, I had imagined leaving Marcus. LJ had been expressing his discontent with your absence. And in my fantasies, I imagined you two breaking up, you passing the bar, going on with your life, finding somebody else, and me leaving Marcus and me and LJ running off into the sunset. But that kiss let me know that that was not in the cards. My imagination was just about my discontent with my life. When I was done coming to terms with that, I prayed. When the whole thing with Jessica happened, I was confused because I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that in that car, when I prayed, I heard God clearly tell me that I had turned my marriage into an idol. I turned becoming a mother into an idol. And if I just trusted him with my heart, like I'd always done, he'd give me the desires of it. Finding out that my husband was seeing another woman and they'd made a baby didn't look nothing like the desires of my heart. Passing out and finding out that I was pregnant spontaneously was only half of the bargain. I'd been trusting God, believing he was going to give me double for my trouble. And then I had a whole nother wake-up call. The whole time I was running from crazy behind Jessica, I was questioning God about how it was possible that I'd reinvested in my relationship with him. And this was how it was turning out. A best-selling author couldn't have wrote a story like that. And it was my real damn life. And then he checked me. He asked me if I used my dedication to him as a distraction. And on bed rest, unable to go anywhere, unable to do anything, and unable to see or talk to any of the people that I loved, I finally had to accept that that's exactly what I'd done. I'd heard God's word like it was a bargaining tool. What y'all call that in the legal world? Quid pro quo? Regina said quid pro quo. Angela said right. I'd process his promise like quid pro quo. What I didn't realize was I was Daniel in the lion's den. I didn't know it, but God did. And I was right where he needed me to be, to heal the parts of me that needed to be healed before he blessed me with Angel. And before he blessed me with Q. And so Regina cut off saying, hold on. Because you always talking about some Bible story and you know I love God. But I am not nearly as well read as you are. Help me understand this whole Daniel and the lion's den thing. If I remember correctly, there was an order or proclamation that the people couldn't pray to anybody but the king. And Daniel opened up his windows and prayed to God out loud where everybody could hear him. And so the king threw him in the lion's den, right? Angela said, right, but there's a little bit more to that. Daniel was a slave, but he was doing his biggest one. And when the king asked the people who reported to him about that boy Daniel, they told him that Daniel was the best slave they had. The king kicked it with Daniel, yada, yada. Long story short, the king promoted Daniel. Regina said, you've been talking to Donovan a lot, haven't you? Because you really just gave me niggalations. Like, what is happening right now? Angela said, actually, yes. Donovan and I have been talking scripture a lot lately. Regina said, I could tell, because you sound just like him. Angela said, and the same people who brought Daniel to the king turned around and was jealous because the king had promoted him over them. They knew how Daniel got down. They knew that he worshiped the one and only true God. So they suggested to the king to stroke his ego, that he make that edict. And the king, being a man, fell for it. He didn't realize the unintended consequences associated with that proclamation, though. He didn't want to throw Daniel in the lion's den. But a proclamation signed by the king couldn't be undone. The king didn't believe in Yahweh, but he'd seen how Yahweh had blessed Daniel despite the fact that he was a slave. The king told Daniel, may the God you serve continuously rescue you. And while Daniel was in the lion's den sleeping like a baby, the king was up all night, tossing and turning. When it was all said and done, God saved Daniel. But there was no way that he could have known that that would happen. He knew God was able. He knew God could. But he couldn't guarantee that God would. He trusted a big God. And he moved with big faith. Not so that God could move on his behalf, but simply because he loved God. I know now that it all had to happen. I had to go to the lion's den. God didn't need proof that I trusted him. He needed me to prove to myself that I did. And then he gave me Angel, Melissa, Michael. He didn't give me double for my trouble. He gave me double twice. Child, now I got 7 kids. And Angela and Regina both guffawed. When the first night of the women's retreat, if you will, ended, Maribel made a beeline for Angela. She said, "Sis, I had a great time, and I promise I will be back tomorrow, but I need to head home." Angela said, "For what?" Maribel said, "It's a long story. We'll talk about it tomorrow." When Maribel got home, she could hear the music before she got in the door good. It was darn near 4 o'clock in the morning, and Donovan was up and on one. Maribel said, "Father God, please give me strength." When she walked into the music room, there was Donovan in his boxers in the dark with a half-empty bottle of alcohol sitting on top of the piano and no glass. Maribel took a deep breath. She walked over to Donovan and massaged his shoulders and said, "Why you still up, babe?" Donovan said, "I couldn't sleep." Maribel said, "You've done all that you can. Today is going to go however today goes. I thought we were on the same page. I thought we were letting God and the doctors fight this battle." Donovan said, "We are. I am. I'm still trying to make peace with the fact that sometimes God gives us grace for the stupid ish we does, and sometimes the best we can get is mercy." Maribel said, "You talking like mercy is some kind of consolation prize. You and I both know it's still more than we deserve." Donovan said, "Please, let's not talk about what I deserve." Maribel said, "Thank God we don't get what we deserve. You made this bed, so now you got to lay in it. But thank God you don't have to lay in it alone. You've got him and you've got me." Donovan said, "You always know the right thing to say, but right now I don't want to talk. I want to play." Maribel chuckled, and to her surprise, Donovan started playing the piano. He thought he was talking about that other playing. She listened as Donovan remixed a secular song and made it spiritual.
"I know the devil mad that I never gave up. No, I never did. When I feel so out of luck, I serve a good God. I'll prove it to you. I can promise that he'll be good to you, 'cause I've had some issues. I won't forget that he never quit, and I'm so proud to admit I serve a good God."